Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very special car we're going to be reviewing, and it's this E46 M3 CSL, and it belongs to BMW UK. So we've come down to their headquarters in our M2 and we're going to be taking a drive in this car. I've not driven a CSL for probably around 9 years, so I did drive them when they were quite new. We used to tune quite a lot of them when they were like up to 3 years old, and then after that obviously people are using them less for track and on the road, and they're becoming a bit more collectible. I'm really interested in buying one of these with my business partner because we like the same cars, and we've bought the E92 M3 recently and the E30 M5, and we do want to add a CSL to our collection. So today I'm hoping to drive the car and remind myself of what it's like and see if it actually is as special as I remember it being. So the interesting thing is this CSL will probably cost around the same as it would cost to build our M2 now that the price of the M2 base car has dropped. So for 50 grand, which car would I prefer, the M2 or the CSL? That's what we're hoping to answer today. So we found a nice bit of open country road. Let's take the CSL for a drive and see if it is like what I remember. I probably drove one 2007 maybe, the last time I drove one. And I just remember it being very different to the normal E46 M3. It's got very different suspension setup, steering rack, and obviously the carbon airbox, which is what a lot of people know this car for. Yeah, the sound is just as glorious as it ever was. And with the suspension, you can tell immediately it's really compliant for what is quite sporty suspension. So through the corners it's pretty flat, and it doesn't get unsettled by these bumps in the road. It's actually very fluid, and it's not too fast that you can get yourself into trouble. And I think the older I get, the more I realize it's not about power, and it's really about how the car makes you feel. And this car does make you feel happy. It does put a smile on your face. It's really settled on these roads. It's damped very well for stock suspension, and that's one thing I think in the more modern M cars that is missing slightly. They feel like very hard to the point they get unsettled on bumpy roads, especially like the ones we have in the UK. So I'm not really sure whether they actually test on roads like we have here before they release cars, but this is very competent. One negative, which a lot of people will point out obviously, is the SMG gearbox. They never made this car in a manual, but once you get used to it you can manage it. I've just remembered now that you kind of have to treat it a bit like a manual, and if you want a smooth gear change you just let go slightly of the accelerator and then come back onto it once it's changed. But yeah, immediately you can feel the difference in the steering rack between the normal E46 and this. Inputs are much more direct and sharp, but it's a suspension that's really impressive. I mean, I don't have a huge amount of time with this car, but I have been driving it around this morning and I've been super impressed with it. A lot of the times it's a case of, you know, do you want to meet your heroes? I've met this car before, and it's being reintroduced to it. I don't think it's lost any of its magic, and that's really impressive considering the age of the car now. not sure if it was a mistake actually driving this again, because just like with the E9 M3s, I think I'm going to want another one. We're going to head back now, pick up the M2, and then I can give you some sort of comparisons between the two cars. They're not direct competitors, but at the moment you can essentially build what we've done with the M2 for the same amount of decent CSL costs. And although they're very, very different, I think that it would be very difficult to choose between the two of them. But let's get back to the M2 and I'll jump in that, drive it, and then give you my parting thoughts. This outro was meant to be filmed while I was driving the M2, but unfortunately I had a blowout on the motorway, and that's the reason why it's wearing an odd wheel. Coming back to the CSL, it is just as good as I remember it being when I drove one maybe 13 or 14 years ago. Considering that car is now 17 years old, it's absolutely sublime. Now, when comparing to the M2, we've spent probably another 25 or 30,000 pounds on a base M2 to get it to exactly where I want it. Now, it's not very often you get an opportunity to build your dream car, and for me this is my dream car. I've been able to do everything I wanted to do to it. And the telling thing about the CSL is that it came like that from the factory. It's actually very special. The suspension is sublime, the intake noise is to die for, and it has all the special carbon bits. You know, it has the front bumper, it has the roof, it has the rear diffuser, it has all the carbon inside. And that's something that I've had to do to this to make it comparable to a CSL. So my idea behind this car was to make it into a GTS, which BMW never made. And I think the next phase for me is to make it into something like a CSL. So to put back seats in it and make it a little bit more toned down. But I'm really glad I got the opportunity to drive the CSL again. I did really want to buy one of those. I've never owned one. I have owned E46 M3s that have been heavily modified. And driving BMW's CSL has just made me want one even more, and I really love to add one to the collection. It's a great car, and I think for it to come from the factory like that was an absolutely amazing feat, and I don't think that BMW have repeated that again with the modern ones. But for now, I will enjoy the M2, and hopefully one day I'll add an M3 CSL to our collection. Thank you for watching, guys. If you want to watch more of our videos, you can watch them over here. If you want to watch what YouTube suggests that you might like from our videos, you can watch them over here. As always, if you haven't already, please like our video and subscribe to our channel. If you've got any questions for us, please drop them in the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them for you.